Welcome to Banking on Experience, the one-stop shop for all your financial services tips and tricks, the future of business and the future of the customer. Here is your host from CRM Next.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Banking on Experience, featuring our guest, Denis, who's a CRM market researcher, blogger, and author with regular postings in CRM industry outlets, and the founder of Beagle Research Group, which researches cloud computing and its effect on CRM. In addition to the 3 books he's authored, Denis issued a seminal white paper, The New Garage, calling for the industry to embed workflow, analytics, and social networking into what was then a simple system of record. So welcome, Denis.
Hey, Marla, how are you?
Great, thanks. So this episode is all about a checklist for effective CRM implementation and usage. So let's dive right in. Can you share perhaps the top 3 or 4 on your checklist for effective customer relationship management?
Well, sure. It hasn't changed much in the decades that I've been doing this. Way back when, we used to say people, process, and technology, and it's pretty much still what you look for. I would modify those topics just a little bit to say plan, engage your employees, and these days you really have to use analytics.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many organizations actually don't plan their CRM implementations, and it starts with doing a self-inventory of what your business is like today and how you want it to change. And once you've done that, developing whatever measures and metrics you need to manage the business of the future that you want CRM to somehow help you do. When you do that, you will ensure that you capture the right data. So that's the first big thing. The next thing, engage your employees. In the research that I've done, even very recently, employees are very activated to do a good job and to work with their management and be aligned and all the good things that you expect. The interesting thing to me was that in my research, it looked like there were a lot of companies that simply didn't have the technological tools to support their employees and enable them to do the best job that they can.
Right.
So need to find a way to engage your employees. There are several ways I could talk about. Maybe we'll get back to that. But the third thing, once you've engaged your employees and you've figured out what measures and metrics you want to use and the KPIs and other metrics that you're going to use to manage your business, make sure you've got a good analytics foundation for the business, because these days it's virtually impossible to run a business at a high level without analytics that tell you where the business has been, where it's going, and what the next logical things are that you might want to consider doing. So that's 3 in a nutshell, but I could go on and on and on.
Yeah. Well, what do you consider most relevant for our listeners to keep in mind when it comes to effective CRM right now?
Well, to me, effective CRM means platform-based CRM. Something we don't talk about, but by a platform, I mean the substructure that supports your customer and employee-facing applications. It's no longer enough to have applications. The platform knits together various and disparate things for process flow, for analytics, for a whole host of things. And it generates code. And the most important thing I think about CRM is that in order to take on the future, you have to have the ability to perform your business in an agile manner, business agility. And business agility is driven by software flexibility. The only way you get software flexibility is you stop trying to handcraft the code and you let the machine generate it. It generates without errors from the platform, and that enables you to pick and choose opportunities out there and turn on a dime if you have to.
Yeah.
So platform is the other big thing.
Mm-hmm. So are there additional factors that banks or credit unions should consider when choosing a CRM for banking?
Well, I think it's a good time for CRM in banking, especially because there are some competent products out there, CRM Next being one of them, that enable organizations to not start from scratch with a generic CRM product, but start with something that's tailored to their business. I think after that, an organization, a bank or a credit union, needs to pay special attention to integration issues and security issues. 30 years ago, when I started my career, I was selling a compiler and a programming language into resellers that happened to sell into banks and credit unions, as well as some other verticals. And for them, security and integration were the two key things, especially because back then, most banking systems were written in COBOL. The credit union systems that I was supporting didn't run in COBOL, and they had to have good ways to share data, either by tape or direct transfer over the phone lines. That's still true today. It's still true that integration is important because there are a lot more applications that need to share the same data. And of course, security is never been more important, especially in a place like a bank where everybody in Eastern European countries would love to invade and steal.
Yeah.
So those two things.
Okay, security and integration. So what led you to identify SaaS as a disruptive innovation and not just another software delivery mode? You were one of the first, I think, to have that revelation.
Well, I've always taken an economics and evolutionary approach to trying to analyze the software industry. Economics is really important because it gives you a handle on why people do things. People do things to make money or to save money. And when SaaS came along, it was completely different from on-premise, let's put it in the computer room, very expensive approaches to IT. And every organization had to have a computer room, had to do all of that. Along comes SaaS, and it's a complete change in the business model. And in that change, I saw a tremendous possibility for disruption. And at the time, I was working with and consulting to a lot of different companies that were using SaaS, or even before that, what they called hosted software, not software as a service. But the point is, they treated SaaS as if it were simply a way to deliver the software. There was only one company that I saw that had a bigger view and was taking a look at how this innovation could change the way IT was done, and that was Salesforce. And they did okay. Other companies have come along and started riding the same wave, and good for them. A lot of the early technical issues have been solved. But, coming back to it, fundamentally, software as a service was the thing that began commoditizing IT in general. That is always a disruption.
Yeah. So you've been recognized among your peers for your unique instincts to anticipate and predict market movements well in advance, as well as to explain and provide practical business scenarios of how new technology can be applied by executives for competitive advantage. Can you give us some of your predictions on where you think things are headed in the world of CRM?
Well, it's interesting. Just as old-fashioned IT at the turn of the century was being disrupted and commoditized, I think we're sort of seeing a repeat of that in CRM today. I think CRM is being commoditized simply because there are so many good quality products out there, and there are so many specialized products out there. So I see us reaching a point with CRM where it is beginning to be commoditized. And part of commoditization revolves around the idea of everybody in society getting some use out of the disruption. And CRM started as a disruption.
Yeah.
So I think one of the big next moves happening in our industry is what I call the CRM-ification of society. I don't have a good word for it yet. CRM-ification doesn't roll off the tongue. But if you look around, lots and lots of businesses and industries are adopting bits and pieces of CRM. CRM is sort of the carrier, the envelope that contains analytics, for example. Organizations have been collecting data about their environments, about their customers for a long time. And analytics is now able to go after that data and make predictions about what happens next. In the age of COVID-19 or coronavirus epidemic, we're beginning to see CRM being used to track cases and exposures. And we're also seeing CRM making its way into various parts of government, whether it's through call centers, for example, doing things that are as mundane as reporting potholes or inquiring about trash pickup or things like that. CRM tools and techniques are enabling all kinds of industries to do with their constituents and their customers things that they couldn't afford to do before because the processes were just too manual and they required too many employees that no business could afford. So I think that's one of the big things. I think the other big thing that's happening is that all of information technology is turning into a utility. In the same way that we have natural gas piped to the home or the restaurant, or electricity everywhere, or telephone and cable service, I think IT is becoming a utility in the same regard. IT today is ubiquitous and cheap. I think one of the big things that we need to do in addition to low cost and ubiquity is to further break down the silos that keep data separate while maintaining security. And over the next few years, I think those are the two biggies that I'll be watching quite a bit.
Yeah, well, certainly customer expectations have gotten to a pretty high level in terms of what they demand from their businesses. And if you can't have an effective CRM to be able to adapt to that, it's going to be pretty tough to do business in the future.
Yeah, I think so. I think you look at the situation and ignorance is bliss. They just expect the stuff to work.
Right. So, Denis, you recently had a book come out. I guess this was a passion project of yours. It's called The Age of Sustainability. And we couldn't let you get away without asking you to share a little bit about that. So what's that all about?
Well, the age of sustainability, it really just takes some of the tools and techniques that I was using for the last 20 years in CRM and tries to apply it to the problem of climate change or global warming. Yeah. And, I've been noodling around with this idea for probably 50 years. I'm not as young as I look. No one is. But what I discovered in my research is that there's this thing called a K-wave, which is an economic cycle that lasts about 50 years. K-waves only started becoming apparent in the Industrial Revolution. So we've had about 5 K-waves since the Industrial Revolution, depending on how you track time. And what I discovered was that we're at the end of the current K-wave, which a lot of people, myself included, refer to as the age of information and telecommunications. And a K-wave runs from early disruption to commoditization. Yeah. And in any era, it is the thing that drives the economy. So before information and telecommunications, we had the age of manufacturing and automobiles. Before that, we had things like electrochemistry. Photography became a thing. Extracting aluminum from bauxite ore became a thing. Those things drove a great deal of economic output. So the question becomes, what happens after the age of telecommunications and information? My answer to that is, well, we're in a pickle right now. We have to do something about the way we're killing the environment. And by the way, we're running out of fossil energy. We need to put ourselves on a new energy paradigm. And all of that went into the age of sustainability. It suggests that the next K-wave is about sustainability, and it takes a look at some of the things that we consider hard problems, like what do we do instead of fossil fuels, or or how do we remove carbon from the environment? Both those things get treated, as well as talking about what makes a K-wave and how do you know you're in one? Stuff like that.
I love the economic viewpoint of sustainability. I haven't actually heard that before, and I love that. I have heard actually that we only have about 50 years worth of fossil fuel left in the ground. Is that something you've found to be the case?
Absolutely. Organizations like even the U.S. Department of Energy, the Energy Information Administration admits that. So does the European Union's IEA, sister organization, and many oil companies see the same thing. So, I mean, they've even gotten it down to an estimate of about 1.687 trillion barrels of oil left in the ground.
Yeah, certainly our kids and grandkids are going to have to be creative.
We're going to have to be creative if we want kids and grandkids.
So, Dennis, you've written a book titled "You Can't Buy Customer Loyalty, but You Can Earn It." In a nutshell, what is the best way to earn customer loyalty?
I think the best way to earn customer loyalty is through customer engagement. A lot of people think, well, we just need a great customer experience. And the sad answer to that is no. And in the book, I quote a lot of business school research that's been published at MIT and Harvard and elsewhere. And it all comes down to how well you're engaged with your customers such that the customer will go the extra mile to do something for you, whether it's talk to a newbie or recommend you in a forum, things that you might not even be aware of, but that materially affect how your brand and your company are viewed in the world at large. So customer engagement is huge.
Yeah. So I'm especially curious to know who's earned your loyalty with our final question. What company has made you feel more like family than a customer?
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples of some that have, and one example of one that hasn't, but I will protect the identity of the one that hasn't. So, believe it or not, big companies are doing a very good job of working that angle. Companies like Costco are really focused on the customer. And, I go into the Costco store and people know me and they can't be too helpful. They do whatever they can within the context of that environment to help their customers. I also see it at the produce market where I buy all my vegetables. People know me, people help me, people know what my special interests might be, and if something's in season, they'll make sure that I know about it. Like, for example, asparagus is in season where I am right now. Other companies that seem to do a really good job are companies like insurance companies. My car insurance company is Amica. My business insurance company is the Hartford. And they have a very specific interest in making sure that I'm engaged because they know that I pay them premiums, and if everything goes right, they don't do it very much for me for the premium, right? If I have to file a claim, then I really find out how good they are. So anytime they have an opportunity to show me how good they are without filing a claim, they're really happy to do that. And I've had situations where they've jumped on a phone call with me and walked me through a website and answered detailed questions and just in general went the extra mile. And so I'm happy to talk about them. So what does it look like when somebody doesn't do that kind of thing or when they're just too focused on the bottom line? A few years ago, I bought a car from a local dealer, and they delivered the car and they said, we're going to send you a survey, and if it's at all possible, please give us a 9 or a 10. It was a net promoter survey. And they said, if you can at all possibly do that, please do. Nothing else counts. An 8 is too low. It won't help us. So fine. I said, okay, I know what you're doing. At delivery, they delivered the car. It was a warm evening. I went to open the sunroof and nothing happened.
Oh, no.
I had to bring the car back the next day to have them fix the sunroof. Now, The survey never came.
Mm.
The dealer was too afraid of my reaction to the defect instead of realizing that they could get extra points for being supportive of my need.
Yeah.
So the survey never came. I'm a smart guy. I was in CRM at the time. I knew what was going on. And I never went back. I never bought that kind of car again.
Yeah.
That's, microcosm, the reality of the marketplace today, I think.
Yeah, well, turning around a bad situation into a positive one can definitely gain you a lot of loyalty. So that's too bad they missed that opportunity.
I think so.
Well, Dennis, it's been a real pleasure hearing your insights today. Thank you so much for joining us on Banking on Experience, and have a great day.
Thanks. It's my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Banking on Experience. Remember to tune in each week and subscribe, where we aim to simplify work, drive growth, and deliver on experience.